This was an interesting quote that I got, and it says, the influence of mom and dad in the home is 2 to 3 times more effective than the church. So if you're out doing and being and going and leaving the training in righteousness to those at church, what's the most effective? According to this, the home, the training in the home is the most effective. So I challenge you, keep your priorities in order. Keep your families first. And here's a couple checkpoints. Develop a plan. Talk about your ministry. Talk about the things you're investing in. Share those things with your family. It is vital for them to understand when you do take on a ministry role, what you're involved in, how your life is being poured into others. I think maybe I was a little not as good at that as I should have been. I had it all up here, and I was busy. I was a busy mom with running here and running there, and I think maybe I didn't share with them as much as I could have about what God was doing, so God would be seen. Not that it didn't look like I didn't want it to look like I was busy just at work, but that God could be seen through it. So develop a plan. Talk about your ministry. Be proactive in your scheduling. We all know that if we don't schedule that time with our family. I just spent a week away at a mission trip, and I had a team member, I'd never met this woman before, but she's truly become a sweet friend. And she's the head women's coach at USF, the head women's soccer coach at USF. And it was funny because we didn't relate hardly at all in terms of soccer, which we were on a soccer mission trip. We related as moms. And we began talking and sharing about this time and how important it is to schedule time with your family and to make sure you plan those nights together and with your husbands and that kind of thing. And we talked about that. And I shared with her how when my boys were little, we did that love in action boxes. And I've shared that several times here, but a love in action box is where you have a box that you give your children, and inside of that box is 52 different things that they can do with mom or dad alone, just that one child. And even on the airplane, as I was sharing this with her, she has twins that are 6, a boy and a girl. And she feels the pressure of working full-time and coaching and being and traveling and not being with each child as much as she'd like. And I just was beginning to share with her, and I said, that's a great way to schedule time one-on-one with each child. So you have to be proactive. Even my children now, they're grown. My youngest is just getting ready to turn 20. And even now, one of them said to me the other day, gosh, Mom, we don't hardly ever go out to dinner together anymore. And I just thought, man, I need to be more proactive. Yes, they're busy. We're busy. I think they're so busy going, they don't have time to go. They aren't interested, but they are interested. They do want that time. So be proactive in scheduling. Recognize the needs of your children. And Pastor Jeff just really put this really succinctly the other day in one of his messages when he said, their needs may not be what we think they should be with sports and activities and lessons and all the extracurricular things, forsaking the spiritual training. So we need to recognize our children's needs, and we need to understand that training them in righteousness is our highest calling. And then realize the power of saying no. Just because there's a need does not mean it's your calling. And I will be the first one to say, if I ask you to do something or serve on something, I will be the first one to say, I want you to pray about it. I want you to talk to your spouse and your family. And then I want you to, if your answer is no, I respect that and I honor that. I honor it. You don't ever have to feel guilty about telling me no. Or I don't want anybody to ever make anybody feel guilty about saying no if you're putting your family first. Your priorities are your family. Okay, protect your family. Be entirely present when you are at home. That's important. There's a little saying that I used to have, and it's still a little jingle that I have in my brain, and I think of it fairly often. Because when you are home, you have to minimize the interruptions. You can be so consumed with being busy at home working, cleaning, checking the email, being on the computer, cooking, organizing. You can be so distracted while you're at home that you're really not at home with your children. But the little thing I used to say when my children were little, cleaning and scrubbing can wait till tomorrow, for babies grow up, I've learned to my sorrow. So quiet down cobwebs, dust, go to sleep. I'm rocking my babies, and babies don't keep. For me, I would much rather be on the ground playing with my boys or out in the yard kicking the ball than cleaning house. I'd much rather switch that priority and give them the time. I have all the time in the world to clean my house now, and I still don't do it. So. All right, number 5. A leader must effectively manage her time. Spending time with God will help you keep those priorities in order. If you have sat down with the Lord in the morning and your day is completely crazy busy, you have got more things scheduled in that day than you know is possibly can get done. But if you take that time and you sit down and you spend that time with the Lord, you have been amazed, I'm sure, that at the end of the day, the order with which things got done, you are able to accomplish what you set out to accomplish that day. A day hymned in prayer is less likely to unravel. I'm sure you've seen that little saying. And it's true. There's truth to that. Spending time with God is the most effective thing to manage your time. I'm going to read Mark 1. I liked this verse. I thought this was Mark 1:35 through 38 says, "Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. When they found him, they said to him, 'Everyone is looking for you.'" Have you ever felt like that? "Where are you? Everybody's looking for you. We all need you at one time." But he said to them, "Let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth." So Jesus was intentional about his time management, and we need to be as well. Number 6, a leader must learn to effectively handle criticism. This is a tough one. You will not be able to please all of the people all of the time. And you will be criticized as a leader. And I want you to remember one thing. Take it as constructive. Listen for substance in the criticism and have an open heart. Don't respond immediately. The best thing you can do when someone comes to you and criticizes or has something that they feel that you need to change or you've done wrong is to say, I really would like to pray about that. Thank you for sharing that with me. Because guaranteed, if we try to respond immediately, it's going to be in our own flesh. And it might not be the best time or the best thing that we could say in that situation. Listen for substance, remain calm, avoid immediate responses, evaluate their comments for truth, and then decide on the proper action. The attitudes are completely within the control of the leader. Your attitude is completely within only your control. And I like this. Billy Graham says, all leaders get criticized. It is their response that sets them apart. Okay, this one sort of follows right behind. A leader must triumph over failure. And we can even see that in Genesis 3 with the fall of man. In Moses with his failure to enter the promised land. King David in his sins with Bathsheba. We've been studying the book of Jonah in our summer Bible study. And I mean, literally, I have heard the story of Jonah since I was a little girl with flannel graph. Anybody remember flannel graphs? But I don't think I've ever heard the story of Jonah like I've heard it through this study. And the way we've looked at the life of Jonah as we've really dug deep into the direction in what God has for us out of that book. we've actually learned to see interruptions, what we think are interruptions, are actually divine interventions. And in Jonah 2, verses 1 through 6, Jonah has to learn to triumph over failure. And he says, I cried out to the Lord because of my affliction, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your billows and waves passed over me. And then I said, I have been cast out of your sight. Yet I will look again towards your holy temple. The waters surrounded me, even to my soul. The deep closed in around me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I went down to the moorings of the mountains. The earth with its bars closed behind me forever. Yet you have brought my life up from the pit, O Lord, my God. Jonah had to understand and realize he had to triumph over his failures. Peter walked on water. He denied Christ 3 times. Yet he had to recognize his failure so God could use him in the kingdom. We have to admit our failure. We have to accept responsibility for it. We have to make restitution if possible. Grieve the loss, accept the advice, reevaluate, and establish accountability. Accountability must be available, must be seen in a leader's life. In Genesis 3:9, we see God looking for Adam, and he says, where are you? And basically what Adam said to God is, I have messed up big time, and I am out of here. I am going to go hide my face because I am in big trouble. Adam did not want accountability for his sin. He did not want God coming hunting him down. He was ashamed. But we have to have accountability as leaders. And I encourage you, seek out an accountability partner. Find someone who you trust that you can give permission to ask you those difficult questions. How are you doing with your intimacy with the Lord? How are you doing with being submissive to your husband? How are you doing with what God asks you to do about such and such? We have to have those accountability partners, those little spiritual nudges that come along from friends that we trust and admire their walk with the Lord. So seek out an accountability partner, and don't be afraid to be transparent with that person. I was a very young Christian here at Indian Rocks, and I admired a woman from a distance. I admired her walk, I admired her family life, I admired her testimony, and I desperately, as a young mom, wanted her as a mentor and accountability partner. But I was afraid to ask. I was afraid to ask. Why was I afraid? I guess I was afraid she'd tell me no. So I didn't ask. But many, many, many years later, at a time in my life when I felt like I had to have a mentor, I had to have a godly woman to pour some things into and for her to pour into me, I went and asked her many years later, and the most beautiful friendship was formed. So I just think, what would have happened if I would have had that urging as a younger woman to go ask someone to be that accountability partner?